All right, well, welcome out to the School of Last podcast. We're here at the Clean Comedy Challenge at beautiful Third Coast Comedy Club. How are we doing out there this afternoon, folks? Leslie did a good job of putting this thing together, and I haven't got to attend one before, so I'm a little extra excited. And on top of that, she has Larry Weaver here, who I'm going to interview and try to get a lot of knowledge out of him for you guys. Larry's not only a comic who his first time ever on stage turned out to be like a headlining gig. He's done all kinds of crazy things in his career, but he's also an agent. He books me, he books Leslie and some other comics. And so I'll try to get to both sides of what he does as a comedian that helps him get gigs, but also what we can do to make it easy for him to book us and when we should approach him and what we should have. And we'll definitely get to that at some point, probably in the later half of the podcast. But first, I want to introduce my guest, Larry Weaver. How's it going, sir?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
It's good.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Now, I've known Larry before you became an agent. You were a
Yes.
comic. The first time we were together was right here in Nashville at Zany's.
It was.
And you played music, played a little guitar.
Yes.
Did you have a song called State Fair Girl or something like that?
I did. Yeah, I did. I had like a 7-minute showcase spot. You were, I guess, maybe the feature act. And I only had time for like one song, so I would come out and ask the audience, like, what do you want to hear? And I give them some options, and they would always choose like either country or rap, and I would do whatever they said. And
Right.
It was pretty wild.
And do you remember what year that was?
Was it 98 maybe?
That sounds about
Yeah.
right. So probably before I moved here in 99 and then kind of put my roots down. So we were both road comics at that time,
Yep.
traveling around, featuring, maybe doing some headlining gigs in some B and C rooms, some of the lower tier stuff to kind of work ourselves up to headlining or doing the bigger rooms. And I saw you then, and we didn't really cross paths for many years after that.
Right.
Because as you guys know or may not know, when you're an opening act, all your friends are opening acts, and you're all opening somewhere else. There's rarely a show where there's 10 opening acts hanging out together. That'd be maybe tonight. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Or 10 feature acts, or sometimes there's a showcase where there's multiple comics that are kind of your buddies and stuff. But
Right.
It's many years later that then I saw Larry had become an agent and was booking things as well, and kind of doing almost like in baseball, they have the player manager like Pete Rose. You weren't betting on comedy at the time like he was as well, but you kept your feet in both arenas for quite some time.
Yes.
And still do.
Yes.
Now, for the folks here that are kind of getting their feet wet and just trying to get established, what are some things that you did early on as a stand-up that helps you be bookable, that helps you develop relationships and friendships with the comics you worked with? And then, of course, I want to hear a couple of mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many people here have a full-time job right now? Yeah, almost everybody. Great. So I started out in college at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And, being in college is kind of like having a full-time job. You have this thing that you're doing, and comedy was something I did on the side. I was a business student, and everything I learned in business school, I applied to comedy. Every class, marketing, advertising, finance, whatever. I was an accounting major, and I just applied it all to comedy. And okay, I'm a product, and this is something I'm selling. And, I've always had a very business approach to it. So, just starting out, realizing that, you want to build a brand of your name, but people don't know who you are yet. But, people aren't necessarily looking for you, but they're looking for comedy. There's always a need for good comedians that never be fulfilled. Like, really good. If you're a good, solid act, you can find work.
There's plenty of work.
There's plenty of work, yeah.
And when for first trying to establish your identity, I see the case sometimes where a comic, this has happened more than I would like to admit, but I see a comic that's got a fully branded website,
Yes.
fully branded business cards, and they've only done 3 shows. So is there a cart before the horse thing that happens sometimes? Is that a bad idea, or is that kind of defining who you are before you find out who you are on stage and what the audience will accept from you?
Well, I don't know. I may have been that comic. I don't know. I did my first time on stage in 1990. I was an open mic night on campus. I liked it, wanted to do it again, but there was no opportunities. I mean, there was Charlie Goodnights in Raleigh, but that may have well been another state, when you're in college. So I wanted to do more stuff, and on campus made the most sense. So I found 4 other guys who were like the best guys. It was a comedy contest sponsored by Certs, and I picked the 4 best guys. And I said, let's form a group and do shows together. So we actually were a group of open mic comics, basically. And we formed a group, and we gave our group a name, and we started doing shows as this group. The group name was called Selected Hilarity, and we started doing shows around campus. And we would have other people too, other comedians as well, but we were got the headliners, and we very quickly developed the name. And yeah, we got pictures developed. We had a friend who was a photographer, and we did the pictures, and we did one sheets. There was one Macintosh computer. There was one on the entire campus back then.
Yeah.
And we had it was a school newspaper had it, and we knew somebody there, and they made one sheets. So we had really nice stuff like from the beginning. But we were good, actually. We were a pretty talented little group. And then, over time we started doing improv and sketch and different things. But we started out, it was just flyers and promo and just putting it out there and articles. We had like newspaper articles before we did our first show. I mean, like I said, I was taking everything I learned in business school and applying it to this. And yeah, just shameless promotion, nonstop. And it worked,
Well, as far as looking at it from a business, of course, all business is supply and demand. And so back in those days, because I started roughly the same time you did, same years. I started in full time in 92, but did an open mic in 91 and about a half year of that before I kind of got all the way into it. And we were coming in on, there was a huge wave of comedy.
Yes.
And then the waves pulled back a little bit. And like me and you were standing there going, is it going to take us out to sea again, or are we going to be stuck here on the beach? So there was still a demand, but at that point it was probably the first time where there were more comics than stages in the early 90s. In the 80s, I've heard so many stories of comics that would walk into a booking agent's office. They would have 12 calendars for the 12 comedy clubs they booked, and they say, just go put your name on a week and it's yours. Now, wouldn't we love that today, right? But we were that had happened, and then it receded, and we were still trying to get into it.
Yeah.
How did you find, especially with an improv group, that's the way I started as well. How did you guys find your gigs before the internet, before websites, and when there was just one Mac at your college? Because we only had one too. That was, I got out of college in 1990, so.
Yeah, well, we didn't start as an improv group. We started as open mic comedy. The shows originally were all stand-up.
But nobody was paying to see open micers, right? Like you weren't booking yourself as 4 open micers.
Well, originally we did some shows around campus. We actually did get a paying gig like really early on in my hometown festival. Going back to the early point of asking who had a job and, what should you have a good website and promo? Yes. I mean, if you have a full-time job and you're hoping to do this as a career, go ahead. If you have the money now, while you've got that income coming in, get good headshots. You need good headshots. You need great video. Great video is everything. So yeah, get a good website now. Get the photos now. Get it all now while you've got that income. If you're thinking about, doing this as a career and leaving the job at some point, while you have that income coming in, spend all that you can and make it look as good as you can. Even if your act isn't there yet, get all that ready so it's there and it's in place. And that's what we did. We had every money that we made. So we got, a few months into our first show, we booked a show for $100, and we spent all that $100 back into the show and into the company. I ran it as a company. We formed a partnership. It was real legit. We had a lawyer and everything. I just did everything that I learned, in business school. So every money we made, we started doing bars and coffee houses and things around town. We started charging covers. We were charging $5, and we get 300 people. So that's a lot of money when you're in college, and we didn't take any of it. We spent all of it back into the group. So we heard an improv group came to campus called Guilty Children, which had Tom Shalhoub in it. And we heard about this thing called NACA.
Right.
And we didn't know we didn't, back then, like you were asking, like, how did you hear about stuff? You didn't hear about things. Unless
somebody had gone and done it, and
right,
came back and told you. And a lot of times they wouldn't tell you because they were inviting competition back to the.
Yes.
But for folks that don't know what NACA is, and how many folks, just a quick raise of hands, have you heard NACA before? And some folks definitely
3 people.
haven't.
All right.
So it's a very unique opportunity for a comic who appeals to the college audiences.
Yes.
Tell them not how easy it is to get booked, but the system they have in place for getting bookings and how you can audition and go.
Well, that's what we were going to find out. So we heard about this thing called NACA, and we thought, we're perfect for this, but we didn't know what it was, or Shalhoub was a great, very nice guy. He's doing very well, and he was very free with his information. which is great. And making friends with other comedians and asking them questions and networking is definitely the way to go. And Tom was great. He didn't, he told us how it worked. And so they had a website you can go on. You could request some information from NACA, and we saw they had these conventions. So they had these big regional conventions and then a national convention every year. And especially back then, before the internet, you didn't know how to contact a comedian. You certainly couldn't contact a comedian directly on Twitter. I mean, you wouldn't know how to contact them at all. Like you wouldn't know their agent or their manager, or if you wanted to hire someone, you'd have no idea how to do it as a college student. So there were these, there was this organization that existed, and we thought, man, we're perfect for this. We're gonna be in the NACA. So we got the video together, and we had our all promo together, and we sent out a tape. We sent out a VHS tape. We made it and mailed it out to all the NACA agents, and NACA would send you a list of all the agents, and we sent it out, and we thought, oh man, everybody's going to want to work with us, and nobody, not one agent was interested, not one. And we knew we were perfect. And like, what was the problem? And the feedback was that we weren't mainstream enough. And we didn't know what that meant. We dressed like college students, and we were pretty wild. It was a wild show, very high energy, and we just didn't know what they meant. So I thought, well, I've got to get to a NACA convention. I've got to go see for myself what this is all about. So again, how do you find out? You go. Like people, especially now when there's so much information, people are like, how do you do this? How do you go? Right. Go out and find out that the information is out there. But back then, I was working in professional wrestling briefly, and I convinced the wrestling promoter to get a booth at NACA.
Now let's be clear: you weren't throwing the hammer on people. You weren't in the match. You were doing what? Well, this is interesting.
Yes,
because you can do a lot with your writing skills. Tell them what you did.
Yeah. So I'm some people credit me as the very first pro wrestling script writer, and it's only because I had access to a computer, and this was '92. But there was a company out of Charlotte called South Atlantic Pro Wrestling, and the booker was Raging Bull Manny Fernandez, and he was a real hothead, and he had just got fired, and I had written all these scripts because I didn't know wrestling. There was no one wrote scripts, but I didn't know that. So I wrote all these TV scripts, and I went to the show and I gave it to the promoter. I thought my dream was professional wrestling. That's what I thought. So I go give the promoter, and he had just fired the booker for the show, and he's like, "Oh wow, this is great. Like, do you want to write the TV show?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I was still in school, so this was very exciting. And I thought, "Oh man, this is what I'm going to do." And I did work in pro wrestling it took about 2 months to realize this is not what I want to do, which is okay too. If you have a dream, you're like, "This is my dream. Comedy is my dream. I want to do this. I'm going to quit my job and do comedy." If you find out it's not for you, that's fine. I always thought pro wrestling was what I was going to do as a manager or a ring announcer or somewhere behind the scenes. 2 months in, I'm like, no. Yeah. And it was great to find that out and be done with it and put that behind. But I convinced him to get a booth at NACA, and we went to NACA, and I remember it very vividly. So there's thousands of college students come. This was a Southeast regional, but it's huge. And they come to see these acts because back then there was no other way to see them. And it was the opening segment, and we're sitting around at these tables, and the first group to come out was the Blenders. They were this a cappella high energy group, and they were all dressed really sharp, clean cut, and they came out, and the place went nuts, just crazy. And I'm like, okay, I get it now.
We need suits.
Yes, that's exactly right. So yeah, I got so excited, and I saw there's a trade show, and people have booths, and they have promo. We had promo, but it was black and white. The good acts had color. And back then, color 8x10s were reserved for the super wealthy. Yeah. So we're like, okay, I see what we need. And then people had posters. And this is all big money stuff back then. So I'm like, okay. So I went back and I reported back what we saw. And I saw Vic Henley and Mike Rayburn and a lot of people that would go on to great success. So I went back and reported. I'm like, this is what we need to do. And so, yeah, immediately we started wearing ties. We button-down shirt. We went to the Gap and we bought khaki pants and button-down shirts. And they had 5 different color polka dot ties, so we wore ties. And we did a new video. We had 3 cameras shoot. We spent like $1,500 on this video. Again, an enormous amount of money for college students. Sure. And we sent it out, and every agent we sent it to wanted to book us. So just going there and seeing what works and seeing how they dressed and seeing the promo they had, sing, okay, this is going to cost money, but this is what we need. Because, especially for comedians who are starting out, or even at any level, 20, 30 years in, it's all about the video clip. And in NACA, it was back then. Like they will watch, I think, 60 seconds of video or something like that. And that's how much if you send me a video now, I will, out of a courtesy, watch 60 seconds, but that's it, typically. So you got to have a strong video, and you got to hook them quick, and it's got to be just dynamite. It's got to be dynamite. But that video clip can get you that showcase on NACA, or that booking, or get an agent's attention, and it can open incredible doors for you. And that's what happened.
And just before we close the door on the NACA thing, so it's National Association of Collegiate Acts?
Campus activities.
Campus activities,
yeah.
Okay. And it still exists
yes.
if you feel like you've got something for the college age group to devour and consume on campus. It's still out there. The beauty of NACA, though, which does not exist really anywhere else in the same way, and the way that you got a lot of bookings all at once, is after the showcase at your booth, people stop by and see the agent that represented you. Say, hey, I want to see the Selected Hilarity. We'd like to have them in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. We're interested. The agent took that information to the big board and put Larry Weaver and Selected Hilarity in Latrobe, PA. And then the kid that went to Carnegie Mellon or University of Pitt says, oh, he's gonna be at Latrobe. We'll have him in Pittsburgh the night before.
Yep.
Then a guy in Philadelphia sees, oh, he's gonna be in Pennsylvania. We'll put him here. And so it becomes what they call block booking.
Yep.
And so a college that may not be able to afford a $5,000 college act, but maybe had $3,500, could pull their schedule together with 4 other people in the region, and all those colleges would get that reduced rate. But the comic or the band or the improv group would be in one area for the whole week, and they're more than happy not to travel as much and make one bigger check. So your group did that. You got the showcase, and then how many bookings came out of that first one?
So we had our first showcase was in Boston. It was a national showcase. The night before, I think the hotel next to we stayed down the street because we couldn't afford to stay at the real hotel. It was like $130 or something, and it was mind blowing that a hotel cost that much. So we all stayed in one room, 5 of us. We slept on the floor. And then the next day at noon, we did our showcase, and it wasn't even full yet. People were still coming back from lunch and sort of straggling in. And we did 15 minutes, and we booked over 100 shows. It was like a record at the time, just instant. And all the people, I think people not being there helped, because people were like, oh, you missed it. Like, it was a huge buzz. So it wasn't like an overnight success, because we had been doing it for a few years. But we hit the ground running, and we bought a van, and we went out and did that. So a lot of success early on.
Yeah, and that's cool. And again, it's still out there if you want to check it out. And there's also APCA, which is a slightly different version.
APCA came later.
That does the same kind of thing. And they have regional showcases, and sometimes you can perform in each region and get a little following going. Or you went right to the national one by a stroke of luck. That was your first one, was the national? Was it the one in Boston?
We had a good tape, and we had we had a good tape, and we were custom made for that. I mean, I knew that we were custom made before I figured out the formula, but once I saw what we needed to do and how we needed to dress and what we needed to put in the package, because you submitted a tape, but you could also put in your folder. We had full color folder. We hadn't done full color posters. We didn't spare an expense. And again, like if you have a job now and you're able to afford nice stuff, get that nice stuff. Again, even if your act doesn't hold up yet, you can get your act better as you have this great promo.
Right. So the first package you sent in, you were kind of a little more generic, wasn't polished. It was like buying the big bag of Oreos, and then you're like, oh, they're buying Cheerios only, and you kind of got it all colorful, packaged together, and this is what they're buying. So we're the same on the inside. I mean, Oreos and Cheerios, same thing basically, right? But it's the packaging that kind of sells things and moves it forward. So that's cool. And that was early on. You did that, and then not too many years later, I look up, and you started an agency, Larry Weaver Agency originally.
Yeah.
What kind of drew you to that? I know you had a background in business, but also you were learning how to code and do stuff on the computers too, which kind of helped that, right?
Yeah. So we did the NACA thing for several years, up until about 97, I think, something like that. It was full time for several years. It was fun, but it's hard to keep a group together. And but we, it was all amicable, and we decided to go our separate ways. And then I thought, well, I'm going to be a solo act, and I'm going to go out and do NACA as a solo act, and I had some success, but not great. And we were very successful. Like, we had a lot of success, not just in NACA, but we would go to New York and LA and Chicago. We'd play all the clubs. Industry was very high on us. We did all kinds of auditions for, like, we auditioned when before they hired Jon Stewart, they were looking for people to host the Daily Show. Each of us individually auditioned for that. We auditioned for the Dana Carvey Show. I mean, people were big on us. We went to Hollywood parties, New York parties. So to go from that to, okay, I'm a solo act now, kind of starting over again from scratch. I didn't know it was going to be so dramatic. I thought, hey, it's me, the guy from Selective Hilarity.
Yeah, very selective now. Just
one. Yeah, I thought, well, I was going to get, even if a fraction of the bookings, it would be still good money because it's just one person instead of splitting it 5 ways. It didn't turn out to be the case. I thought, well, I'll do clubs and I'll go out and do that. And I started doing clubs and I'm like, I don't like this either. So I was at a point where I kind of had to start over again. I had built this thing, this product and this brand, and now it was gone. And now I'm building this new brand. And with all the success we had, and, the nice hotels and all the great treatment, and to start over kind of from scratch, I just didn't want to do it. I featured and headlined some smaller rooms, and again, it just at that time in my life, I'm like, I don't want to do this. So it was right at the height of the .com boom, and they were just handing out jobs left and right. So I thought what I wanted to do was to get a job. So I was a full-time comedian, but I wanted a job, which is strange. You don't hear that very often.
Right.
But I wanted to make some money to make an album. I wanted to make a studio album. I did a lot of musical comedy at the time, so I wanted to afford a studio album, which is very expensive, and I didn't want to just blow through my savings. So I'll go get a job, because they were just handing out jobs back then, sort of like now, I think, lots of jobs. So I'll get a job, and I'll save up some money. I'll make the album, and I'll put that out, and I did that, but I ended up, I thought I was going to work for like a year, and I ended up working full time for like 10 years. But as I was working full time, again, taking every opportunity I could to learn, I was doing job in computers, web design, and internet marketing. When internet marketing first came out, I was one of the early people in internet marketing, and just learned everything I could, and all the software they would let me use at work, and all the hardware, and all the courses they would let me take. I just took everything. And again, I applied it to my career. I was doing my job. I was doing what they paid me to do. But I was thinking, how can I use this for comedy? So that's when I started sort of booking other people while I was working full time, sending, I wasn't willing to go out anymore. I was working a full-time job, and I didn't want to go out every weekend or even during the week. So I would recommend other people. And again, got a lawyer involved, got an accountant involved, started a new company, made it legitimate, got the contracts, really good, and everything I needed to do there, and started doing that and booking out other people. It wasn't I never had a plan to be an agent or like, oh, I'm going to start this agency. It just sort of happened organically. And when I started booking out other people, I thought I need to make this pretty legitimate and make sure I'm doing it right. So I got some people involved who knew what they were doing, and and for a while there, I was just working crazy. Like,
I'd imagine between your regular job and then trying to get this off the ground, trying to not only do all that, but also connect with the comedians, and during daytime hours or nighttime or whatever you had open, and weekends, you were probably close to burnout getting that thing off the ground, I'd imagine.
No, for 10 years I worked 80 hours a week, or every day, 7 days a week. And I was in my 30s, so I had the energy to do it, but by the end I was getting pretty tired.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot to not only, you rebranded the group once, you came out as yourself, which is a new brand, then an agency, a new brand. So at least you had the experiences from the previous launches, if you would say that word, to kind of get things rolling. At what point did the agency start gaining enough momentum where you're like, I like this full-time job that I have that's helping me get this other thing running, but now I want to be this other thing exclusively and do my comedy and book other comics?
Yeah. What's
the tipping point? Because I think a lot of people all look for, when can I go full-time, or when can I quit what I already have? You mentioned saving some money and being resourceful while you have that full-time job, but what does it look like, or what did it look like for you to say the right thing for me to do financially is to quit the daytime job?
Right. So before I started working the full-time job, I made a list of goals for myself. So in comedy. And personally never wanted to move to New York or LA, which our agents, we had an agent in New York, and they always pushed us to move there, and I just didn't want to go. And if you don't want to go to New York or LA, don't do it, because you have to really want to do that, or Chicago or wherever. If your heart's not in it, or you're reluctantly going, it'll eat you alive.
Yeah,
So,
if you're broke and unhappy in Charlotte, North Carolina, going to LA is going to be 10 times.
just don't do it.
Yeah, because you'll see other people that are happy and or
If
at least
it's
pretending to
if
be.
it's your dream and you're going to make it no matter what, absolutely do it.
Right.
But I just did not. I wrote down, like, I want to live in North Carolina. I want to make this inconceivable amount of money. I wrote down a figure that I couldn't figure out how I would possibly do this. And I wanted to play at resorts, and I wanted to play at beaches. I wanted to play mostly in the Southeast, and it just didn't. I didn't know how to do it or how this was going to happen. But I wrote it all down, and I looked at it. I'm like, this. The only thing I knew that I could do was to record albums and get on morning radio. Of course, there was Bob and Tom and John Boy and Billy, and I'd had some success with that, and I could record albums and send that out, and I was doing that during my job too. So I put out 3 albums, and Dr. Demento played me quite a bit, and I did some shows with Weird Al and stuff like that. So I was still performing, working the job on top of all this other stuff. And still, I just didn't see how this was going to work, you know.
Yeah, I was divided between the two.
I was working a full-time job. I was performing comedy. I was making albums. I was doing the agency. And still, these goals that I set seemed inconceivable. The things that would eventually make them possible weren't invented at the time that I set out my goals. And those things were Sirius XM came along. So early, as soon as I heard about Sirius XM, I sent them my CDs, and I sought out people there. I'm like,
Sure.
How does this work? And I talked to a guy there. Well, I think he maybe have been the comedy programmer at the time. I'm like, how does this work? He's like, people send us CDs, and we stack them up on the desk, and we go through them one by one by one, and we have just stacks and stacks of CDs. Back in the day, this was probably early 2000s. So they just had physical CDs, and they would go through them and listen to them and assign tags to them so they could identify what the tracks were about, and they would program them in. And so people started saying, hey, I heard you on Sirius XM or whatever. And I was like, I didn't have satellite radio. I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
But later I heard about Sound Exchange. And by the time I heard about Sound Exchange, which is a royalty program for satellite radio and other things, Pandora and other things, Sirius had been playing me since 2005 for years and years, pretty regularly on Laugh USA and Blue Collar. It was Blue Collar Radio at the time. Yeah. So, 1 year there was this huge influx of money. And also, along that time, I started. You remember the episode of The Office with the Dundee Awards, where the Michael Scott gives out the funny awards, and they're really inappropriate. I had a boss who did that. A boss at the company I worked for, he did that, and they were terrible. They were so offensive, and I'm like, there's something here, And so I was in the internet marketing, and you could actually look up what people were searching for, and I could see that people were searching for funny employee awards, and I thought, I'm going to make something about this and put it on the internet. And so I put this page. Initially it was just a page with some funny award ideas, and it was huge. It was like instantly became the most popular page on my website. So I thought, I'm going to make some actual funny awards and sell them. So I made a PDF document of these funny awards, and I put them on sale online in 2007 maybe. And I've sold copies in over 60 different countries around the world. America's the big market, but also UK and Australia, South Africa. I mean, it's crazy. So that took off. So I was doing all these things, and they started to pile up, towards the end of the 2000s.
And let me just keep your thought, but I want you to hear what he and I had some luck with this too, finding ways to earn money when you're not on stage. If the only time you can earn money is when you're on stage, you have to be on stage all of the time. If you have a family, that means you're gone, and then pretty soon you don't have that family anymore. Like, there's so many things that trickle down from if I can only make money on stage. These two things made not only sense money coming in income-wise, but now it was able to take you from your daytime job and funnel money towards this dream of running your agency and doing your comedy. So Pick it up there, but I wanted to make sure they caught that.
Yeah, and I'll add too, my wife is super cool. When I met my wife, she had her own job. She had her own house. She's very independent, and we hit it off. She's super supportive, thought I was funny.
And I heard she's moving in next week. You got to merge houses next week?
Yes,
now?
yes. That having a supportive spouse really helps. We don't have kids. That helps too. I mean, it makes life a lot simpler. So, you got to make things work within the parameters that you have. But having a supportive partner is so important. And I'm not going to say I lucked into it because I had thought that out. I had other people that I was dating before that weren't supportive. So, if you've been married for 20 years, you're stuck, I guess, at this point, if you're following your dream. But it really helps if they're supportive.
Well, and again, if they're not supportive now when it's not that successful and you're only gone 3 or 4 days a week, they're probably not going to be on board when you're gone all the time.
Right.
So you need to have those discussions early on.
Yeah. So I was just building these things. I was researching the internet. I had the website and I had the awards going, and then the Sound Exchange money started coming in, and I was performing and booking people. And by the late 2000s, I was making more at my side job than I was making at my full-time job. Now, my wife was supportive, but she didn't want me to quit my job, and I was really burning out. And I totally understand. And she was right to not want me to quit because we had health benefits and vacation and all that good stuff. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just keep doing it until I can't do it anymore. And then the recession came in 2008, and I got laid off. And I'm like, yes!
Yeah.
Like, well, honey, sorry.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, so I got a severance package, and it was just the greatest thing. It was so much weight lifted off my shoulders. And I wasn't worried at all because at that point I was making significantly more doing comedy than I was working at my full-time job. And it didn't take me long to make up that.
But also, don't miss it. That's like 14, 15 years into being a comedian.
This is a slow success story, yeah.
Right.
No, yeah, more than that.
Yeah, so
we're almost 20 years in at this point.
Yeah.
So I forget what your original question was about being aged. How did I know when to quit? I was making more money, and my wife, she wasn't quite on board yet. I actually lost my job, but that was fine. It was great, and the business was there. And again, I'm repeating myself, but it was a legit business. It was a LLC, and we had an accountant and a lawyer, and all these things that you need if you're really going to do this serious and you're really going to make a business. It's a business. This is show business. You are a product. No, I know it sounds so commercial and anti-artsy. If you're into the artsy and the love of it, that's cool too. I'm just giving you my perspective. I have a very business-oriented perspective.
No, so. I used to struggle with that too a little bit, to where I felt like, man, am I just doing this? There were many years where I had a T-shirt that would sell a lot, and there got to be one year where I'm like, I'm really just still doing comedy clubs to sell a T-shirt. Like, I've stopped writing new material. I'm just trying to make sure that this one bit that the T-shirt's related to crushes, so I sell a lot of this T-shirt. And my wife would come home from her job, and she'd see like 8 boxes of T-shirts in the garage, and she's like, and I'd be rolling T-shirts in different, I'd have a blue rubber band for small and a yellow rubber band for medium, so I didn't have to go in the box and dig it out, and I could sell more to people as they were coming out. And at that point, I realized, I could just sell this T-shirt to somebody else, let them sell it. I can drop that bit and start creating again. But you have these things that come and go that provide income, but you have to pay attention to, am I only doing this because I've been doing it, or is it because of the right thing for here forward? You had done some great things as far as creating a downloadable PDF that people could buy online. You've got a CD going on SiriusXM. He's still creative, but he created businesses, little mini businesses that were paying into his bigger business.
Yeah,
right?
And I would encourage everyone to have, if you're thinking about quitting your job, don't rely on live performances. There was a podcast or something I was hearing the other day. I don't remember which one it was, but like, when do you quit your job? Well, when you're making the same amount of money as the job you had. No. And I know people 20, 30 years in, Rick, and you know too, that they lose 1 week of work at a club or one cruise ship week, and it puts them in dire financial straits. You don't want to ever be in that position. That's a terrible, terrible position to be in. So if you can, while you're working that job, try to get your name out there, work on your club set, do all that stuff. But if you can find other ways to make money too, whether it be selling something online, selling a T-shirt online, selling your merchandise online, getting stuff, you can have a full-time job and record albums and get them on Sirius XM. I did. I have 4 now, and 3 of them was when I was working. So you can do that and get it out there and have these streams of income coming in. And it might be maybe you're going to quit your job, but you can get a part-time job. It doesn't matter.
You don't get a trophy for just being a full-time comic and suffering in loneliness when you're not getting booked.
Don't do it.
There's some kind of ego thing that happens to people once they've been in comedy for a while. Are you full-time? No. Oh man, when do you want to be full-time? If you're being fully funny on stage, I don't care how often you're doing it. It doesn't have to pay all your bills, but you have to be realistic about it, and you have to realize that once it becomes the full-time thing, that it is a full-time business. I mean,
yes.
I don't know if I could even do the math on how many hours I work on my business at home versus the minutes per stage per month. It's ridiculously business-sided so that those other things happen, but also so that if I didn't have the gigs, there were still things coming in on the side.
Yeah.
Right? I want to talk to you about the agency side of things for a while. My first question is, as a comedian and an agent, how do you still like comedians at all? Because you have to deal with the good and the bad and the non-responsive or the slow to respond or the poor promo that comes in, all the things. You would be happy to book as many people as you could if they had the right materials, the right act. What are some things that not only new comics, but comics that are listening that have done it for a while but not had traction with an agency? What are some must-haves? What are some it would be nices? And what are some don't ever do thises?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing to realize. Everyone in here will leave with an agent. Everyone here is going to leave this Clean Comedy Challenge with an agent, and that agent is you.
Right.
You are an agent. So let's define what an agent is. Let's do that. So a lot of people will call me or contact me like, are you a booker? I want to be on your show, or like I want you to book me. I'm not a booker. A booker is, and these are my definitions, so other people may disagree, and you can feel free to disagree, but a booker is someone who can book you into a room or a show. They've got something that they've got going. If you own a comedy club and you book the comedy club, you are a booker. You may also be an agent, and you may also be a manager. Managers typically handle more of your personal affairs and different things. But it's important to know the difference between an agent and a booker. So I'm an agent, a talent agent. I represent you the same way you would represent yourself. So I can't book you anywhere. People, when someone calls me or contacts me and says, I want to do your rooms or I want you to book me, I know they don't know anything about me, and that is my number one turnoff. Don't contact me if you haven't bothered to look on my website or do any research or go to my Facebook page or know something about me. Oh, irritant. I'm getting.
No, it's easy to see because I get because I have School of Laughs and it's on the internet. I get phone calls. Do you do shows on Saturday? I'm like, I do shows on Saturday. Like, can I be on it?
I think you have a comedy club.
Yeah, they think I have a comedy club because Google makes you have a location. It's just like it gets crazy.
Oh yeah.
But they haven't even done that research. They just think I've got a comedy club called the School of Laughs.
Yeah. So what an agent needs from you is what you need for yourself. An agent is representing you. If you've ever booked yourself or tried to get an agent, you're acting as an agent on your own behalf. So you need a good video. You got to have a good video. And I know a video is hard to get. It's hard to get. And it doesn't get any easier as you advance in your career. It's still hard, but you've got to have a good video. I will, as a courtesy, if someone pesters me enough, I will watch 60 seconds of their video. And let me tell you, when I say 60 seconds, I mean 60 seconds. If the first 60 seconds is someone introducing you, I will stop when the 60 seconds hits the clock. If you haven't walked on stage yet, people have sent me videos, and I didn't know it wasn't them.
Right, you thought the person up.
Right.
Because they were on for 5 minutes before they brought the.
It's the MC introducing them, but I didn't know. I just assumed that was them. Or, a lot of people want to do a musical montage or something like that. I'm not a fan. And I know you had Lucy on the show. This may have been on Dusty Slade's podcast. I'm not sure. Some people like to see the walkout. They like to see you being introduced and walking. I think Lucy mentioned that on one of the podcasts. She likes to see the MC introduce you, and then you walk out.
How you take command of the audience, that part of you. Yeah.
So Lucy is books zanies. So listen to that podcast of Rick's and look out for Dusty Slade's podcast because she had some really good information. So she likes to see all that stuff. I don't want to see it. I want you to have a joke right off the bat, a really good joke right off the bat, and just bring it. Now, if you want to do a montage or some credits or something, do it. You can put it later in the video, but start out strong. That's my opinion, and that's my advice to you, because I'm not going to watch much. And I will tell you, because I have a video player on my website that I use. I don't use YouTube videos. I use a program called JW Player on the internet, and it will tell me how much video people watch who are booking shows. So people come to me, they want to book a comedian. I give them suggestions, or they look around the website. They don't watch very much. You'd be shocked how quickly they drop off. They make an opinion of you very, very quickly. So it's important to start your video funny. So I can't emphasize that enough. So what I need from you is what you need to get to me is a great video. And that's what the client needs who wants to book you, because I'm connecting you with a client. Just like you would try to, if you were going to reach a client, they're going to want to see that video, and it needs to knock their socks off right away and get them interested. If you're just, you can't come out of the shoot just limping out. You got to really hit them hard. There's so much competition.
Yeah, and I see that a lot too. Just in shows in general, where the comic comes out and it takes them 5 minutes to kind of get into who they are. Like, as an audience member, I don't even want to see that, let alone somebody was trying to book somebody, to have to sit. And just, it may sound a little harsh, but you get a lot of requests.
Yes.
Right. So time is valuable, and to think he's going to watch 7 minutes to wait till you get to your closer, no agency is going to do that. No client that's potentially going to book you is going to do that. And that might be one thing that's holding you back right now. You've got a great set once you get rolling, but that first minute isn't there. Use the time at this challenge to work on that opening minute, if nothing else. Or you think you've got everything going on and you've got good material, maybe that first minute is good to you but not to the others. So always be working on a new opening joke. And the bigger, the stronger, the better. You'll separate yourself quickly.
Yeah, and there's different videos that you need. So if you're going to submit for comedy festivals, which I recommend you do. I don't have any specific ones that I recommend, but if there's local festivals to you, most of the festivals, maybe all of them that I've seen, want an unedited video. So they're going to want to see from, it doesn't have to be always from beginning to end, but they want to see a block of time, and they'll always tell you how long the video needs to be. Sometimes it's 5 or 7 or 10, whatever. If you're submitting for a festival, read the guidelines and do what they say to do, because they will disqualify you just right off the bat.
They're looking for reasons to move on to the next one.
But they want to see like an unedited set. I don't mind seeing an edited set personally. If you have your 5 minutes, but you want to start the video with a little clip that gets me hooked, get me hooked. I don't mind that at all. So I don't mind a quick hook and then go to a graphic or something like that. One guy sent me a video, and it started out as a testimonial, a client testimonial. And again, I didn't know there was no graphic. I didn't know that wasn't the performer.
Yeah.
So you start strong, and then if you want to do some testimonials or some videos or something else, you can put that in the video if people want to keep watching it. Because if a client is interested, I'm constantly shocked how little video they watch, but sometimes they do want to watch more. The current video that I'm using right now, as of this taping, for my comedy, I've got a comedy video, I've got a speaker video, I've got an award show video, I've got videos that I submit for the festivals that are unedited. So as a comedian, I have several different videos for different purposes. But the video I have now, I start with a joke, I do a little short graphic. So the video is edited, but it's like if you listen just to the audio, it's continuous jokes and laughter. But during the applause breaks and the laughter breaks, I put up stuff on the screen. And I edit it so that if you want to stop watching at 90 seconds, you can quit. So there's little stopping points along the way of the video. So I made it. And again, if you have one thing about being an agent is you get privy to all this information that you can amass to see how people behave, because it's not always what you think. You assume people are going to watch your video, watch the whole thing, and then they don't, and you don't know why. Or you have a new video. Sometimes an artist will put out a new video and suddenly they stop getting work. And like, wait, there's something wrong with your video and we don't know what it is. Or, I'm not going to name any names, but there's some acts that I've just wanted to work with that I thought were fantastic. And for whatever reason, their video doesn't connect. And it's the video. The video is all important. So I don't want to harp too much on that.
No, but I think it's something too. And in marketing, and that's what you're doing when you're putting videos out. We sometimes forget that we're focused on trying to get the client to understand who we are, and we spend very little time trying to figure out who they are. And if you know who they are and you give them what they're looking for, then they are more apt to hire you. If you're trying to make it all about you, then you kind of have a disconnect. You need to show them how you're different from other comics and all those things. But if you don't have a video that shows you understand they only watched the first minute, or they need to see the first minute and laugh, then you're missing the opportunity.
Yeah. And so video, photos, there's no reason not to have a good photograph. Go get professional photos, please, please. And find someone who knows what they're doing, who's, depending on what town you're in, there may not be a comedian photographer, but seek out a headshot photographer for acting. Or if you have to travel somewhere to get a good headshot, travel somewhere to get a good headshot while you can afford to do it. There, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, and in Wilmington, there's a big film community down there. And I always heard about this photographer down there that did headshots, and she's really amazing. But she's not a comedian photographer, but she's just an amazing photographer. So I hired her to take some pictures of me and some other comedians. We grouped together and said, if I get like 5-6 people, will you cut us basically a day rate? She shot us for all day. So we all pulled our money together, and she was just phenomenal, just excellent. And you want somebody who has. These weren't in a studio. We did them in a theater, but she had the lighting. Someone told me once for acting photos, you want to see the light in the eye, and it's actual physical light. Sometimes they'll use the round ring of lights, and you can actually, if you look really close, you can see the ring of light in their eyeballs there.
And for so many comedians, that light has gone out many years ago.
Yes.
So if you can show you still have that sparkle of hope and something to bring to the table, you're going to stand out automatically.
Yes. And I'm a big proponent of smiling in your headshot. I have to tell everybody I work with, please smile in your headshots, and they're like, oh, they roll their eyes, but like, people want to, they look at your photo and they look at your video. Maybe they read a little bit. Hopefully they read a little bit, but they make snap judgments about you. And if you look friendly and approachable and you're smiling, even if maybe that's not your act, you gotta snag them right off the bat. You can't scare them away instantly.
Right. And don't have the creepy smile.
Right.
Because those of us who don't smile often, when you do smile, it's a little bit, it can be unsettling.
Yes. Take lots of photos and, take hundreds and pick the best one.
Yeah. And I'll just say this real quick. You're in Nashville right now. Everybody that's in this room, Nora Canfield does phenomenal job taking photos. I mean, several of us here have had multiple. I've had the last 5 CD covers. She's done all of them. She's fun and very comic friendly. Knows how to get the most out of you, and the price is great too. So look her up if you're here and you got a few minutes and a nice shirt.
Yeah, I've got one more thing. Your bio. You hope people will read. They don't always read, but put in interesting facts. Where are you from? What's your hometown? Where do you live now? Do you have dogs? Do you have cats? Do you have interesting side jobs? I got the cover of a magazine once because I got assaulted by the Hardy Boys, the professional wrestlers. And I had sent stuff for this. It was like a local.
I'm trying not to do a Nancy Drew joke. I'm going to let you go.
But you never know. Like, I had submitted stuff to this comedy editor for years and years, and it was like infuriating. And then one time there's just a mention in a press release that I was in pro wrestling, and that like fascinated them. So then all of a sudden I'm on the cover. But like, anything, I was an accounting major. I don't do any accounting jokes unless it's a group of accountants. Then I'll try to write some stuff. But just saying I was an accounting major in college, that gets people's interest. Anything. All your side jobs, all the things you think no one cares about, or I just worked at this job for a week, or it's going to appeal to somebody, and you've got to stand out. There's so many comedians in this room. You got to stand out, and maybe that interesting background, or, I grew up in, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, or whatever.
Right.
You never know what will hook someone who's looking to hire you.
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple other things real quick before we wrap up the first segment today. What are some things that when you were a comedian, was there 1 or 2 things that an agent said to you that you just had a blind spot where you're like, oh, I had no idea that this was important, and I'm sure some of us had that same kind of blind spot. Maybe we can pick up a tip.
I was a real troublemaker. When I was in the group, we caused a lot of trouble. We caused a lot of trouble.
Trash in hotel rooms and
Trouble. And our agent, I look back and I realize now they were they never gave us a hard time about it. But now when people complain about acts being unprofessional, we weren't unprofessional. We were mischievous.
Uh-huh.
We were young. We were in our 20s, and we got into antics,
Right.
just to amuse ourselves. And I realize now, as you get older, and you think, well, what mischief can an older person get into? Well, drinking at the show, drinking before the show, drinking maybe after the show. Everybody, I go to shows now, and everyone's, whether you drink or not is irrelevant to this story, but everyone's drinking. They want you to drink. They'll judge you for that. Even if everybody there is drinking and you start drinking, and well, he was drinking. You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. Just be professional, dress nice, show up at the gig dressed and shaven and ready to go. Someone told me, I think at one point, that the show starts when you pull up in the parking lot. So pull up in the parking lot, dressed and ready to go, and be professional. And don't give people a reason to complain. Like, the show may or may not go well, but all your behavior needs to be professional and beyond reproach.
Mm-hmm.
Just go in and do your thing and leave. And a lot of times people will ask you, do corporate events mostly now, or even churches. I want you to hang out afterwards. I try to avoid that. I want to do my show. I want to make a good impression, and I want to leave. Mm-hmm. Social. I'll shake everyone's hand if they, as they're leaving, but I don't want to go out and party. You just don't know. You may derail the whole thing later in the night.
Nothing bad happens if you're not there. If you're there and something bad happens. I mean, there were times where I would do like an association event or something where they'd have 1,000 people at the hotel, and they booked 3 hotel rooms as hospitality suites.
Yes.
And they're like, hey, you want to come up as Barney Fife and arrest some people in the hospitality suite? And in my mind, I'm like, I don't at all. But that's providing more value to the client. But nothing good is going to happen when I go in there, because I'm interacting with people who are drunk out of their minds, because it's the 1 week of the year they can leave home and be like they used to be, or whatever it is. So but if I'm not there, the next day there are no stories to tell. I want to get to this, and then we'll wrap up. Let's say I'll try to make it almost yes and no answer, so I get a few things in. So if a comedian wanted to approach you, they would need an hour show, a good hour show, not their first hour or not 50 minutes that I can stretch on. Like, they shouldn't even worry about contacting you as an agent specifically until they have a program that is solid and it's an hour, and they are able to book that themselves so much that maybe they're having a hard time keeping up with the bookings. That's when you might want to get an agent involved to kind of help you. True or false?
For me, yes. And again, all agents are different. So know your agent, know who you're calling. There's different agents at different stages. There are young agents that are starting out who want to take on clients, so just know what they're looking for.
All right, true or false? If I look at your website and I see a comic who is just like me, my brain goes, oh, they can book a guy just like me, but are you looking for the same guy twice necessarily, or would you prefer to have a variety of offerings to pitch to a client who's interested in hiring someone?
False?
Right. I think so.
You said true or false, and you tricked me with that question.
There's a little wiggle room in there, but my point being, if you go to a website for an agency and you don't see anybody like you that can provide an excellent show, and it's a missing ingredient in their lineup, that could be more appealing than if you see 3 people that do exactly what you do.
Yes.
Right?
True.
Okay, very good. And then the communication between the comedian and the person, say an association called you looking for a comedian, they hired me. My job now that the paperwork is done that you handled isn't just showing up at the show. There's a process called advancing the show.
Yes.
The agent helps with that, but it's up on the comedian to keep all levels of communication open and fluid before the event, the day of the event, with a text that, hey, I got to town all right, my flight got here, I'm going to be at the venue at this time and be there at that time. That big communication relationship that you have can sometimes fix something that maybe didn't go right in the show, or maybe you got to the show and the lights weren't good or whatever, despite the conversation you had saying make sure you have good lights. If you don't build that relationship and you just show up at 8 o'clock for a 9 o'clock show, they're going to have a lot less tendency to still invest in you after the event's over. True or false?
True, yes.
And some of the steps that comics can take besides just an email, how important is it for the client to hear your voice prior to the engagement?
Yeah, so if anyone ever books you for a show, if you work with an agent, if they're okay with it, make sure they're okay with it. Some agents are weird about you contacting the client, but try to win the client over ahead of time. So especially if it's your first show working with an agent, you want to make a good impression. Sometimes the shows don't go well. I get that. I'm a comedian. Sometimes it just, whatever reason, you and the audience don't bond, it happens. But if you can make that connection with the client, if you can call them on the phone, you can do it all over email, but if you call them and make that connection, like, you do a good job, Rick. So I'll send out the contract and I'll say, you're going to love Rick. Rick's great. You made a good choice. And then you'll chime in and say, we're going to have a good time. Looking forward to it. And then you call them and then you start building that relationship. And then when you get there, you text them that you're in town and you're looking forward to it. You meet them on time and you're dressed nice and you're ready to go and you meet the people they want to introduce you around. All these things help you build that rapport. Mm-hmm. And then if the show goes bad, they probably won't say anything bad about you because they like you already. So try to win the people over before the show ever takes place.
Right.
Can't emphasize that enough.
No, and it's something that I didn't do enough early on. I understand the importance of that now. Once the contract's been signed and we have the introductory email saying, hey, everything's moving forward, I'll also look for them on LinkedIn, see if we can connect there, and then learn about them. They went to what college? Oh, I used to do shows at that college. There's little pieces of information that you're not trying to have a cheesy relationship. I'm genuinely interested if they lived in Columbus, Ohio. I did for 10 years too. We probably can talk about some of the same places. I'm not always big on trying to find them on Facebook because I kind of think that's more of your personal life.
Yes.
And I may not want to see what, if I hit your Facebook page and you look like an idiot, then I'm not going to want to go do the gig. And if they see my page, they're not going to want to hire me. But LinkedIn, you kind of keep it, professional to a degree. The other thing I'll say too that I've done more recently, and it never occurred to me before, a lot of events, company events or association events, or even church events, sometimes the comedian is being paid for by a sponsor. You should always ask that question when you've been booked. Hey, by the way, is there an organization within the group is there a vendor that's paying for me to be there? I want to make sure I connect with them, say thank you, stop by their table at dinner, or if I'm going to eat dinner before the show, which I don't typically do, sometimes I'll have dessert or just a quick glass of water before I hit the stage. I'll at least sit with them, say thanks. Sometimes they want to get a picture. I mean, some of these people are paying thousands of dollars to have the comedian there. And if you do the show, leave, and never say thank you to the sponsor, they may not sponsor comedian the next year.
Yes. Thank you. Thanking the sponsor is the tip your wait staff of corporate shows, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to put it. Great way to put it. And it does go a long way. You'll be surprised that they're happy to see you.
And the sponsor is, if you are doing a trade show or a convention and there's being paid for by a sponsor, that sponsor goes to 50 other trade shows.
Yes.
And they may remember you.
And you may have a joke about that sponsor in your act that's not favorable towards that sponsor. And if you do not know, then you can get up there and really stick your foot in your mouth, right?
Yes.
It hasn't happened that I know of to me, but I know some comics who are doing a show for a huge big box store, and they don't have a negative joke about that big box store, but they have a very positive one about their competitor. And in the middle of their joke, they're getting ready, and they're like, oh, I can't change it now, and here it goes. And then dead silence the last 20 minutes of their set.
Yes.
So
I know you're trying to wrap it up, but I think I see a common theme through this whole interview is research. If there's a field you want to go into, whether it's you want to start a podcast or you want to get into colleges or you want to get into churches or corporate, research those markets. Talk to people who are in those markets. If you want to contact an agent or a comedy club booker, research that agent or booker. Listen to podcasts. There's so much information out there. Mm-hmm. If you want to get on a TV show, research the TV show. Find out who books it. Google podcasts. That producer is on a podcast somewhere. Learn everything you can about them. Research the clients. Research the people you're working for. Research the sponsors. Do your homework. There's so much work that goes into this.
And on that same line, do a little industry research. And I used my default question before I thought past it was, how's business? A lot of times it's not good. And yes. You just started a conversation in a negative space that they have to find some way to put a positive spin on. And maybe the only reason you're there is to provide relief because things aren't going well. And I I do a lot of agricultural events, and right now, especially in the Midwest with the rains and the flooding, and the soybean farmers aren't even getting their plants in the ground, or the corn futures have dropped. There's all these things that you may not be aware of, but with a quick check of the NASDAQ or stock exchange or the ag market, you can find out if things are going well or not.
Yes.
And when things are going well, you can ask for extra stuff. When it's not going well, back down a little bit. Be the happy spot for them.
Right. And do that, and be professional. I mean, that's the main thing. I would rather work with someone who's professional and not the funniest person in the world and I've worked with a lot of people who are super talented, but they are a pain, and I'm just not interested. There's too many other people out there to work with who are nice and respectable and will show up on time and do a good job, and the client's happy, and that's what we all want. I don't want headaches, and the client doesn't want headaches. So if you can be a good comedian, a good solid hand, and get a good show and provide a good product and just be professional, you can find work. I believe that.
I believe it too. And if you are a headache, see if Tylenol can sponsor you for the event. Take care of two birds with one stone. We're going to wrap now. We're going to take questions from you guys if you have some, and we've got a little bit of time left, and get some specific answers. I know you probably are thinking some things. We're going to wrap up the official version of the podcast right now. Larry Weaver, thank you very much for being with us today. I learned a few things as well. So
appreciate it. Thank you.